I am in conversation with Ms. Patricia De Lille, who is the Minister of Tourism for Government of South Africa. We are talking at a time when there is enough and more happening when it comes to Global South and when it comes to BRICS as well. Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking out the time and speaking to NDTV.
Great pleasure, thank you.
Let me start by asking you, ma'am, that this conversation is happening at a time when India-South Africa relationship is just turned a milestone, which is 30 years. How do you see this relationship so far from South African perspective? Fill us in with how does South Africa view this relationship now and going forward?
Yes, definitely. We're not only just celebrating the 30 years of our democracy, but even before our democracy, we had great leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, who became part of the liberation struggle in South Africa. We see our relationship going forward for the next 30 years to really begin to use the deep friendship and solidarity to continue to engage and to build the economies of both our nations. We are part of the Global South. We suffer with the same issues like climate change, poverty, and development, and India will be a key partner going forward. But also India's technology space. India is far advanced, and there's a lot that we can learn from them. But also from a people-to-people relationship and the issue of culture and heritage. We're also here to grow the tourism between our two countries by making sure that we look at getting a direct flight between India and South Africa by dealing with the visa issues. So we have got a plan, and we are engaging regularly at the BRICS forum and also now at the G20 forum. And there are so many similarities, you know, the energy issues, the same history from India with transition from fossil fuels to renewable. South Africa is on the same trajectory. So we look forward in really pushing even harder in the next 30 years with our relationship with India.
India and South Africa are both very important members of the Global South, and Global South has some very important issues, climate being one of them, one of the most important, and the COP summit really proved that. In your assessment, how do you see the India-South Africa relationship ties, especially when it comes to climate, and can they become a leader when it comes to Global South, showing the way for some of the other countries around the world?
No, we're certainly on the side of India when it comes to climate change. And of course, India is correct in saying that it is not the developing nations, the Global South, that are responsible for climate change. All the so-called developed countries built their riches and their wealth on fossil fuels, cheap fossil fuels. Yes. And so we as a developing South have to pay for that. And it's not fair. It was not caused by the Global South. And of course, the peanuts that is being offered by the developed world to mitigate the impact of climate change on the whole world, it's ludicrous, it's ridiculous. After having caused the problem, then say to the developing nations in the Global South that you must go and fix it. So South Africa fully supports the stance of India when it comes to climate change issues.
South Africa now has the presidency of the G20. What are the key areas that South Africa wants to focus on in the G20? What about it, whether it is the focus on Global South, whether it is the focus on technology for developing countries, what is it that is going to be the key focus for South Africa in its G20 presidentship?
Just last week, Tuesday and Wednesday in South Africa, South Africa and India came together to look at a just transition from fossil fuels to renewable energies and look at solutions as to how we can mitigate it. So when it comes to climate change issues, there's a very good relationship But with us assuming the G20 chairpersonship, we're also taking forward the legacies of Indonesia, of India and Brazil when they were leading the G20 nations. We will be continue to build on that. And you know, as we invite all the G20 nations to our country in 2025, we can't wait. You know, South Africans are very warm-hearted people. We can't wait to welcome all the G20 members to our shores. But we also encourage people to stay and continue to explore the beauty of South Africa. So it's a very exciting year awaiting us in South Africa.
In terms of your view with regard to BRICS, another very important multilateral institution, a platform where many countries are now wanting to be a part of, how do you see it, its potential, its outlook, given the challenges that the world is facing and the headwinds that exist right now?
Let me start with the G20. It's under the leadership of India, of the G20 leadership, that they came with a resolution to accept the African Union as a full member of the G20. And we want to thank India for that. And the BRICS partners represent millions of people in the global south. And again, it's an important platform to make sure that we look at how we trade amongst ourselves first. And that trade is growing. If you can see that India is our biggest partner in Asia, trading with South Africa and many other countries in Africa. We must, as the global south, as the G20, as BRICS, economic growth must be key on our agenda, inclusive economic growth, so that we deal with all the challenges that we face, like poverty, inequality.
I must ask you about the BRICS currency, its outlook amidst the commentary that's come in from President-elect Donald Trump, who's very categorically said that he's not going to allow anybody or any possibility of an alternate currency arrangement that may challenge or threaten the dominance of the US dollar. How do you see the prospects of the economic arrangement that the BRICS countries have really been talking about and have progressed much on, as well as on the BRICS currency?
Well, there's already an existing agreement that the BRICS currency, amongst ourselves as the BRICS nations, we will trade in our own currency. It is definitely give us value for money, and that has been happening. The debate about whether the BRICS countries want to shift to the dollarization of that, it's not on the agenda. What is on the agenda is that we want to trade as BRICS countries in our own currencies amongst ourselves, and nobody can stop us because it's to the benefit of the nations of the global south.
Madam Minister, I must ask you about the prospect for global south. Where does South Africa see global south 5 years, 10 years down the line? It's at the global south is at the epicenter of global growth that's taking place. It's at the epicenter of young population. It's also pretty much at the nucleus of potentials that the world throws up. How does South Africa view global south collaborations, partnerships going forward?
Definitely from a Africa continental perspective, we have got the youngest people in the world. It's one big advantage of the continent where we can connect with India, Brazil, and the BRICS countries. And those young people that are so prominent must feature prominent in leadership positions, in innovation and more creativity within our economies. And we must create that space and that opportunity for young people to come in and connect young people from the BRICS countries in the global south, because they're going to take over from us as current leaders. We're not going to be for too long, but the current leadership must create the space for the young people to come through, especially in designing and redesigning the economies of the global south.
And lastly, about the India-South Africa trade, the potential that lies, tourism. You are very passionate about tourism as well, ma'am. You are a Minister of Tourism. How do you see that opportunity for India and South Africa going forward? And anything specific that South Africa is doing to really attract tourism footfalls from India and also larger trade opportunities from India?
Well, one of the reasons that I'm here in India and do an outreach program to India is to meet with tour operators, the tourism trade. And we've got two challenges that we face between India and South Africa, and that is route development, air access. We don't have a direct flight between India and South Africa, and that's key to our agenda here. We'll be meeting with Air India, with Indigo Air, with Spice Air, all the companies to say we need that direct connection between India and South Africa. South Africa has now also introduced a completely new visa system for Indians, and we have selected a number of trusted tour operators from India, whereby for an application for a visa, if you want to travel in a group, a family, you know, the generational mixed family want to travel in a group, you just go to your tour operator, and your tour operator will do the visa applications, will design your itinerary. So we are engaging with the tour operators and the trade while we are here to see what else can we do to improve that relationship and build on what we have already between the two countries. Yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking out the time and speaking to NDTV. And you were candid enough when you spoke about the challenges that BRICS faces, the opportunities that the Global South has, and of course the priority areas for South Africa in its G20 presidentship. Thank you so much.